Spawn is one of those characters that remind me that superheroes actually originate from the humble medium called comic books made by nerds and not from money-hungry conglomerates made by Mickey Mouse. I believe Spawn was the first comic book to be targeted towards a more mature audience rather than kids, bringing in more extreme violence and dark philosophical themes. Knowing that I've grew up reading these comic books since the age of 7 really makes me doubt whether I should thank or blame my dad for exposing it to me. Either way, if in some point in the future I become the president or if I commit voluntary manslaughter, I can always attribute that to the day that my dad exposed me to the Spawn comic books. Obviously I'm joking, I don't really believe printed images with the occasional kablam hold that much power. Now let's get to the real meat and potatoes. Spawn is created by Todd McFarlane, who co-founded the comic book publisher called Image Comics, which is basically a tautology. It's like calling your restaurant Food Restaurant or calling your son Human Boy. Image Comics is the third largest comic book and graphic novel publisher in the industry. Really, Wikipedia? So you're saying it's right next to DC and Marvel? Which is really hard to believe considering the last Spawn movie I remember was as jarring to my eyes as it was to my soul. And that would be fine for a 1997 movie, but aside from an animation series released in the same year, there were no new films. My only logical conclusion is that I'm guessing selling toys is some sort of fucking incredible goldmine. Todd McFarlane is unmistakably a successful entrepreneur because he did create a very established IP out of his comic book character, and that is a nerd's dream. So I must say that I love the Spawn IP, although I might be grossly biased. I feel like something as simple as the name Spawn is incredibly good. It's something that people don't give much thought. It sounds cool, it has a cool meaning, it looks cool as a logo. Now compare that to some older hero names and you soon realize they were either random animals or literal American propaganda. Imagine having a hero called Kangaroo or Commander China. Besides the names, the Spawn overall design looks good. And how can it not be if it's a literal iteration of Venom, who was also first designed by Todd McFarlane in the Amazing Spider-Man comics, which makes me think that Venom was Todd's prototype character before fully fleshing it out into Spawn. And this is why Todd is a true artist. And as an artist myself, I recognize one when I see one. A true artist recycles their material, one because we're lazy, and two because we're lazy, but ultimately we have a beautiful character that makes good use of narrative design. From its design elements to the color theme, it reflects the character's narrative. So here's a bit of an exposition. Spawn used to be a highly skilled Marine officer from Detroit called Albert Simmons. During one of his missions working for the CIA, he got assassinated by a guy called Chapel and burned to death and sent to hell. Which sounds like the most overqualified hitman for the job I've ever heard of. Then in hell, he makes a deal with the equivalent of Satan called Melbolgia to become a hell spawn. Al Simmons makes a deal with Mailballs to serve him if he was allowed to see his wife Wanda. Then Mailbalding agrees and returns him to the living realm, but returns him with memory loss and a burned body, basically returning him in the same state that he got killed in. Not only that, he got an annoying demon clown called Violator as some sort of sidekick. And this is why you don't make deals with someone called Mail Bulge. With a vague recollection of his past, Spawn uses CIA files to track down his wife and finds out that she has been married to his best friend and has a daughter with him. This is like the ultimate cuck tragedy story. Spawn has powers that are fueled by something called necroplasm, and once they are depleted, he returns to hell. What I like about Spawn's design is that it reflects his narrative. From his burnt face to a suit with its own will and the necroplasm power that is indicated with the color green, which is also shown in his eyes. And then we have the color theme. Every iconic and memorable character has a good color theme that contributes to their personality and narrative as well. We got the black and white to symbolize the balance between good and evil, to portray him as the anti-hero that he is. And the prominent red color to symbolize the bloodshed in his battles. Now this is purely my assessment of the colors, but we can also come to terms with the fact that these are just generally and universally good color combinations. It's like a Neapolitan pizza. No one's pretending that pizza is some kind of expressive artwork. Pretty much everyone loves the combination bread, tomato sauce, and cheese. Everything about Spawn feels like a rebellious take on the superhero genre. Back in the early days of Marvel Comics, Spawn felt like the first one to take things into a different direction. The first one to brutally murder his criminals instead of kapowing them. The first one to have an over-the-top edgelord fashion sense, and instead of being praised by civilians, Spawn is praised by homeless people and is the lord of sketchy alleyways. And that's why this character interested me much more than any other superhero. While the idea of a superhero horror fantasy on its own is nothing innovating nowadays, it was comparatively back then when you had superheroes helping grannies cross the street. But one thing I believe Spawn shares with other superhero designs is that it's been created with the reverse engineering approach. And what that means is that you think about a cool sounding idea. You design the character to look cool first, and then you think about how you're going to attach an origin story to it. And that is very much evident to me listening to Stan Lee talking about how he created his heroes, but also looking at an early design made by Todd McFarlane in his teenage years. This means the idea and its design had pretty much already been decided. And if you do that in your professional career as a concept designer, that's one easy way to get fired. But at the same time, it is one of the reasons why I think superheroes are loved. To me, it's sort of the limitless mindset of creating characters and worlds in a similar way you used to do when you were a child. Going back to that carefree and creative mindset when you were a child is something most people wish they could get back. And it's this superhero world that lets us escape to that very feeling. Superheroes basically capitalize on your inner man-child. The entertainment industry is the biggest industry in the world, and Todd McFarlane shows that however crazy and different your ideas are from the norm, you can still manage to create a significant IP. With that IP, he managed to create a toy company and film and animation studio. I just wish that he would stop selling toys, because since 1997, I'm still waiting for a Spawn movie that isn't dog shit ass garbage.